we're back. We're back in the retrospective. Last time we did the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Today we start with episode 395. We are rounding out this process of going back, looking at what we've done in the 10 years since we began this travesty. And we're moving through, looking back at what we talked about, not so much rehashing, but kind of like re-examining through the current lens. So we're in 2022, August, episode 395. That's where we began. You did a solo episode. You talk about Prey from that year, 2022.
You know, usually you look at a reboot, you look at a revamp, you look at you watch the studios take a property that they own, that they're trying to revitalize and rework, and it just screams of money grab, because there's nothing really left to say in the majority of these. It's just a copy of what has been done before. But with Dan Trachtenberg's Prey, a film that, you know, in the middle of the pandemic didn't get much of a theatrical release, and I think it was released on Hulu. I was incredibly surprised at how well made this was, and how much it pulled me into yet again the world of John McTiernan's The Predator. And I mean, this shit is at this point almost 40 years old. I don't remember when Predator was released, probably 85 or 86, just shortly before Schwarzenegger would blow up as the Terminator, and pretty much would define the mid to late 80s and the 90s as an action star. But this film, and I've liked the majority of the films in the Predator series, excluding the Alien versus Predator films. But this film, my God, it was really well made, gripping, thrilling, and a fucking roller coaster good time. Have you ever made the time to see it? Have you ever watched it?
No, I've never seen it.
I think you should watch the first film again. And if you have time, because all Predator 2 is a lot of fun. Predators is a crazy, ridiculous good time, but this one takes it back to what that original story was, and it makes it a little bit more personal in the sense of, because it's more of a primitive telling of the story. And when I say primitive, I mean early. It's like, I think it's like the 16 or 1700s. It's the Predator versus Native American tribe, and it's done with a lot of. I think it's done with a lot of respect, but it's also done with a lot of fight, and the feeling, the sense of making a really exciting, fun movie. So I give it a big recommendation for being able to take a story that's almost 40 years old, and finding not even a new angle, but a new way to tell a great old story. So it's the most dangerous game. It's no hunting like the hunting of man, Ernest Hemingway. I loved it. I had a great time with it. I recommend it.
From there, we did episode 396. James Foley's At Close Range. Walking.
Now, was that something that you had already seen, or were you coming to it?
Oh, yeah, I'd seen it years ago.
Mm-hmm. See, that was one of the ones that it was, because it's Christopher Walken, because it's Sean Penn, it kind of sits in the world of cinema that you're basically, if you watch movies, you're aware of that film. You've seen clips from that film. You know the famous scene between Sean Penn and Christopher Walken where Penn pulls the gun on him, and as you later find out through, I don't know if it was inside the actor's studio Penn talking about replacing the gun and the fear, the palpable fear that is in Christopher Walken's face as that moment's happening. There are moments in it that are just great. I think it's a serviceable film. I don't think it was a great film, but I think when we talked about it, I was talking about you could see the real power of both Sean Penn and Christopher Walken, and how it jumped off the screen. And I wasn't disappointed, but I wasn't overwhelmed like the classic. It was one of those movies where it gives you bite-sized brilliance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah. I mean, we going into at East LA College, getting into theater and getting into like film and stuff. It was one of the I was getting into the film program for a time there. It was one of those ones that we would watch clips. Like a friend and I would watch clips, and that was one of the ones that it was like inside the actor studio. You want to see performance. You want to see dynamics. You want to see this shit. It's like, it's Christopher Walken. I love you. The gun is pointed to his face. I love you. And it's like, no, it doesn't. You know what I mean? But you're gonna say what the fuck you need to say. But yeah, we were doing these little like nitty gritty fucking like movies at that point. The next one we did was episode 397. We did Oliver Stone's Talk Radio with Eric Bogosian.
Which I think is a film that has aged incredibly well. I hadn't seen it since it first came out, and when I watched it again, I was really kind of blown away because it didn't leave much of an impression on me when I saw it in 88, 89, but I don't think I was, like we've talked about this, I don't think I had enough life experience to really appreciate the film. I was 14 or 15 years old.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those where it's a shock jock. I think his last name was Berg, the one that it was based on. It escapes me right now, but a shock jock asshole ends up getting fucking killed by a white supremacist fucking extremist, and it's early Oliver Stone. It's it's got John C. McGinley, all that. It's got Michael Wincott. It's another little 80s nitty gritty, dirty little fucking movie. Eric Bogosian's great.
Great performance.
From there we went into From there we went into back to defining the decades, and we went into the fucking 80s. I don't know if you remember about that.
The 80s are definitely a decade of movies that I feel movies just fell off. I think when we were talking about it, if I'm not mistaken, I think I put Rambo as the defining film of the First Blood Part 2, the defining film of the 1980s. I can't remember exactly, but it was pretty high up on my list of films that I think captured the Cold War mentality, Reagan-era politics, the fall of the Cold War, but America's what do you call it, insecurities about losing Vietnam and having to go back to refight it and at least win it on screen. I thought it was a shit decade for movies. It was the action. All it was action films and John Hughes' suburban white angst. And some of those films I like Pretty in Pink and Some Kind of Wonderful. But I watch Breakfast Club now, and I'm like, this is a fucking embarrassment. And if anybody who embraces this shit, I really have to wonder about their simplicity of their emotions or whatever. God, I hate that fucking movie. So, but yeah, it was fame, cocaine, and coming of age. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
What was the film that do you remember the film that you said defined it?
Yeah, the film that I said defined it was Kobayashi. So,
yeah.
It's well, let me go back. The films that were deeper in my list, I think there were definitely things that like characterized the 80s that were in there. I mean, I did put Fast Times in there as you know, the TV tapes, the whole like the cultural stuff that was around that film. You know, go back and listen if you want to get the details. 398, episode 398 in the archive, but definitely Wall Street.
Yeah,
was on my list. That Greed is Good, the fucking Gordon Gekko, Michael Douglas as one of those masters of the universe assholes.
yeah, barbarians at the gate kind of thing. Yeah,
right. And exactly, and that was up there. Videodrome, definitely in terms of the impact of the VCR and fucking like how that affected fucking porn and just shit in general. Aside from just being one of my favorite films, as fucked up as it is, because all my favorite films are fucked up. Tron I had up there just because of the video game, all that aspect. But Koyaanisqatsi is a documentary that it's Koyaanisqatsi Life Out of Balance, and it just shows it has music by Philip Glass, and it's
already a big selling point. Yeah,
it might have been one of the. I don't know. I don't remember the order in terms of like what my first Philip Glass exposure was, but it was one of the early ones where I got the VCR. I mean, I got the VHS. I put the tape in the VCR, and I was like, I watched this because I got the thing from the library, and I was like, this fucking music is like intense. This music is okay. Who did the music? You know, everything becomes that. And then you go and you fucking pursue. And he did an album with Ravi Shankar. I knew about Ravi Shankar because of the Beatles, because of George Harrison. So it was like, okay, so then now, okay, so boom, boom, boom. And then I, oh shit, this guy does. And then he goes on to he's doing all these movies as the years are going on. Philip Glass has become like, my favorite composer. So it kind of, you know, everything starts somewhere. Koyaanisqatsi is a documentary about, it just shows clips of, it set the stage for this type of documentary as well, where it just shows clips of traffic. Traffic sped up, traffic slowed down, traffic going backwards, with music, helicopter shots of, or, you know, nowadays you would think drone, but it's, helicopter shots of freeways, people walking in Manhattan, like the streets where people look like ants, and it's sped up, and it just looks at modern life in the 80s, and even like zooms out of a given city to make the city look like a microchip, and it kind of it touches on this aspect of like the 80s obsession with the future.
Yeah.
While at the same, and then with being modern and being like supposedly like cutting edge, but at the same time, this kind of like looking back, this Reagan era, looking back at like a heartland type of America. And it really touches on the imbalance between those things, and the imbalance in terms of how we just do look like little fucking these little ants running all over the place. Not even ants going in a line, but ants that are like kind of scattered. And you do see the disjointedness and the out of balance, the imbalance in that in that way of life. You talked about They Live. You brought up Breakfast Club in the that was on your list in terms of like the the effect of it. They Live. Looking back on it, I didn't put They Live on my list.
Mm-hmm.
I did put it on an honorable mention. I think if I were to do it again today, I would put They Live in my list.
That's also the country that we're living in now. So you kind of see the seeds that were planted and how they're coming even to greater fruition now. Fruition.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see like that. What a difference a few years makes.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's, in terms of the relevance, that's probably the most relevant film. I mean, Roger and Me is there. That was, you put that on there.
Yeah.
9 to 5. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
on some level, they're all there.
That's to say that there were good films during that decade, but as we defined the project, it was never going to be the best films of the decade. That would be an entirely different episode. We were talking about the films that really that spoke to the mentality of the country that we were living in and the world as a whole. And I think Kobayashi speaks to that. But I also think, for me, They Live brilliantly encapsulates the sleepwalking that we go through in this world. And Rambo is the bullshit dream that we want to believe ourselves to be. This mightier than that, this great warrior society that is no longer, or maybe has never been, what is depicted. I mean, there's a lot of people who believe that shit.
Well, that's why, and I'm gonna keep fucking doing this, but that's why you have posters of fucking Donald Trump as Rambo.
Yeah. But you also have posters of Donald Trump as They Live.
Well, absolutely.
It's amazing how on point this shit is, and how cinema and, popular culture, television, music, whatever, both speaks to, is influenced by, and influences the culture as a whole. I mean, shit, the whole point of what we do here is to not be dismissive of movies as simply entertainment. They are entertainment, and I enjoy being entertained. But there are some movies out there that don't entertain at all and grab a hold of you. There are some movies that entertain the fuck out of you, and as you walk away, you think, holy shit, that sent a message. And with They Live, it's possible that I wasn't even prepared for that message. They Live is a hell of a lot deeper than it has any right to be. And if you look at it on paper, if you look ex-wrestler wandering the streets of Los Angeles fighting aliens, there's no way you're going to think to yourself, that's a commentary on society. But if you have an old, pissed off hippie like John Carpenter, you're going to get something deeper. And that's the magic of a great artist, of a great director. Whatever you want to call Carpenter, he was always underrated. And that right there might be, in a weird way, his lost masterpiece. I don't know.
I mean, that's we're still dealing with that now.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we're dealing with elements of Rambo. We're dealing with elements of fucking Kobayashi. We're dealing with elements of Wall Street.
Yeah.
All of that.
As we record this episode right now, yeah, it's almost like everything is folding in on itself, and it's remembering this particular decade. It's crazy to me how on point so much of this shit is.
Very much.
Yeah.
From there, we went into September, episode 399. So we started doing horror for 2 months.
Yeah.
So
always a fun time. Good. Just
Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes.
Mm-hmm.
We did In the Mouth of Madness, episode 400. That was another John Carpenter. We did episode 401, The Howling, Joe Dante, werewolf movie. Then we went into
those three were a weird little ride because Carpenter has a reputation, The Hills Have Eyes has a reputation, and The Howling has a great reputation. And it was weird to watch something that, as we've said in the past, as I've screamed from the mountaintops, seeing something too late can sometimes have an effect on your enjoyment of a thing or your admiration for a thing. In the Mouth of Madness misses the mark, but I mean, for what he's done, how can you expect Carpenter to bat 1,000 every time? The Hills Have Eyes is interesting for being a low budget, but also achieving what he achieved. And I also think we talked a little bit about the influence of Tobe Hooper in maybe not necessarily guerrilla filmmaking, but low budget, dirty, nasty exploitation type filmmaking. And it's a better film than it deserves to be, but it's not. It's a classic because people love it, and it has a cult quality to it. But I just didn't think it was as great. Now, The Howling, goddamn, The Howling was a lot of fun. That was really a good time.
The effects, I really in that episode got into the idea of the early '80s peep show, fucking porn theater thing, and like kind of relating that to Richard Ramirez. I did a little run on that. So check that out. It's just the vampire. I mean, I keep saying vampire. Werewolf
Those
movies
go hand in hand,
I mean, yeah. Werewolf movies are fewer and further between, but there's just something different about werewolf movies. Yeah, werewolf movies that make them fun. From there, we went into the '90s. Yeah, episode 402 and 403.
And we had to break that. We had to break that up into 2 episodes because I think there's a factor in. I love the '90s, but the '90s is really your decade. The '90s is for you is it's comparable to my fascination and love for the '70s. The '90s, I really like that. I really like doing that episode because I felt like, well, you know how I feel about psychologically films giving a window into who a person is, and to listen to you talk about the films that influenced you, that came out of that decade. I think it goes a long way to understanding you a little bit better as a person, as an artist, as an interpreter of art, which basically is what we do. That was a good time.
Plus, I mean, we've done '90s films in the past. This was not necessarily only like what influenced me, but it was just kind of like, this is the shit that really, as you described it and pitched this idea, it was like what spoke to that decade, what spoke of the decade on its behalf.
And it was something very specific because you're also talking about the end of a century. You're talking about whether people are conscious or not, there is a gradual change in the culture as you change those first 2 numbers in the year 1999 to 2000. That decade, that slow evolution of time, and the difference in who we are from one period to another. And I mean, I think it's fascinating to go back to and really examine it. And I really enjoyed that episode. I really enjoyed talking in a manner that what's fun about those episodes, defining 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s was trying to get a handle on what the world was, either the world that we were living in, or the world that came before us and influenced the world that we live in. That's the kind of shit that really really captures my interest, my psyche. It makes me want to know a little bit more. It makes me want to dig deeper, and that's definitely what those episodes did.
Yeah, I mean, there's I don't know if it's on, I don't know what platform, if it's on Netflix or Prime or what it is, but it has that CNN series where they go over decades.
Yeah, that's on Max. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's a fucking, it's a like add-on to whatever other one.
Yeah.
I saw recently. I saw one of the '90s ones. I saw it was the music portion. Because they break it up into like political, right? So then,
political, technology, the music, movies, TV,
right.
yeah.
And it's interesting that we can look at the '80s and say, well, these things are still seem very relevant in terms of today. These themes of corporate greed, propaganda, this imbalance in our way of life, this kind of jingoistic warmongering and this romanticism towards like the romanticism of the warrior, while at the same time a mistreatment of veterans.
Yeah.
In Rambo, or this kind of like forgottenness. And I look at my list, of '90s stuff, and it's it doesn't resonate. For the most, there are those that do, and I mean, you're going to get that in any.
Yeah. Sure.
But it's interesting that you have. I put Boys in the Hood in there. It was like it was low on my list because of the LA gang shit, the gang wars, plus the rap element, the gangster rap element. I put Kurt and Courtney as number 4. Obviously the whole Nirvana thing, the Seattle thing, where the music was in terms of rock, specifically at that time. Certain types of teen, kind of Gen X, teen and post-teen shit, like Reality Bites, Clerks, Kids, all that.
Did you put Iraqi's film, The Doom Generation, or was that in the 2000s? Yes. Okay. No, that was my my number 1. That was like my plot twist because Natural Born Killers, I had been saying it for years that I thought Natural Born Killers was the film that defined the '90s. I think that's the film I said defined the '90s. Yeah. 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 And that was my original pick, and I've been saying that, like saying it and saying it and saying it, because of that aspect of like coming out of the '80s, the serial killer thing, the media's fascination with serial killers, these fucking these Bonnie and Clyde type couples, like this, the Kurt and Courtney thing that like came out. That came out in '94. The Geraldo aspect, the media, the fucking dysfunctional family, the Al Bundy-ness of it, the all of that stuff is really tightly wrapped in Natural Born Killers, and that sense of the world is coming to an end as the '90s end. That was really like there, but I put that down to number 2, and the Doom Generation was, I think, more significant to me in terms of as a kind of B-side that I was pushing forward. Yeah. Because it was that much more
90s. It was that much more Heidi Fleiss. It was that much more the Doc Martens. It was that much more this kind of like, oh, now there's like gay cultural stuff happening in the 90s, while still being pushed back against by Newt Gingrich and the Republicans, or just different like cultural and pop cultural elements.
Mm-hmm.
The nihilism was on another level. The fucking stupid dialogue was on another level, while still having white supremacist violence come out in the film. And you still haven't seen it, right?
You know what? Criterion put out a 3-film collection of Iraqis. The Doom Generation.
The Apocalypse Trilogy?
Yeah. I own it. I need to make time. And I might do that tonight. I got nothing going on, so...
I think you're going to like it.
You don't think I'm going to like it?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I would be surprised if you were like... I would be less surprised if you were to say, I hate this film.
But what I appreciate it.
I think there might be things that you can appreciate if you look for those things, but I don't know how you're going to react, but I don't see you saying like, oh, I really like this film. Like, I look at the film and I'm not necessarily like, oh, I love this film. I like Natural Born Killers as a film more. I think Natural Born Killers is a way better film. But as a time capsule and as a piece that defines the 90s, I think that the Doom Generation is more of that.
Yeah.
And there is just something about that film that I look at it and I go, fuck, like that shit reeks.
Yeah.
It reeks of the 90s. It reeks of AIDS. It reeks of Nine Inch Nails. You know what I mean? Like, it reeks of the flannel shirt tied around your waist.
Yeah.
And I know that that's not like your experience of the 90s.
Well, that's the interesting thing is though that what year is the Doom Generation?
It's probably 94. It's probably the same year.
94. So what we're talking about is me at 20 and you at 15, right?
Yeah, but it's also fucking Kurt Cobain dying at 27. So it's kind of like...
No, but that's what I'm saying is the influence, because, you know, at a younger age, the imprint that it has on you...
95.
Yeah. So, but the point that I'm making is there are times when something is more powerful because of the age that you come to it with. It's a little bit more overwhelming. It's a little bit, and maybe what I'm saying is that as you grow older, you're less likely to embrace certain things and more likely to embrace other things. And it'd be interesting to talk about the film and where we both... I would have liked to have seen it when it came out so that we could make do an examination that would have been closer to the real experience of the film. If we had both seen it at the same time, you being 15, me being 20, you forming basically your attitude and the persona that you would become, whereas I was already near the end of that. You know what I mean? Or at least more in the middle.
You already had your outfit.
Yeah.
And I get what you're saying, but that doesn't change.
No, the point of the defining thing, it doesn't change that. Absolutely.
Right. Because I'm also not saying that, well, the Doom Generation fucking really helped define me as a person, because that didn't show up in my fucking episode on like episodes that defined me. it's
You mean our cunt episodes? Our self-absorbed cunt episodes?
I think they're self-aware episodes. You know what I mean? Because it's also like, well, it's you saying in your episode, these are the films that this is what happened to me, or this is the process. It's me saying that, and then we're saying to the people who are listening, okay, what are your films?
Yeah.
Like, what are make your list now? Because people are going to do that anyway. Like, people go like, oh, that's interesting. That some people are going to say like, fuck, like there might be someone listening to this right now that says, you know what, fucking the Doom generation did fucking define me.
Yeah.
And this is why. And I think in the relevance of like the age factor, I think might be important, because it's like, when I said, I think key is when I said your experience of the 90s, I think that being younger helped me be more open-minded, so that I was more aware of, even though it wasn't that much younger, but it was still young enough to where it was like, I think my experience of the 90s is more, I think I was more aware of everything.
Yeah.
Because I was more open. Because I wasn't like putting myself, even though I had things that I liked that were like my primary shit, that I was already like, oh yeah, this. I was developing parallel like interests, because while this movie is coming out, I'm also already fucking like exploring fucking like music of the 60s. And we talked about that in the last retro episode, where it was like, well, which childhood are we talking about? Are we talking about my childhood of the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was learning about rock music in general. And I had a general picture of like, okay, we start with fucking like rock in the 50s. And then we're ending up right now with, well, I mean, at the time it was like, well, where's rock going to go now? Because what everyone is calling grunge, like the main guy is dead. And now where is everyone going to go? And has this shit run its course? And for the most part, I mean, looking back at that CNN episode on the 90s, it was kind of like 90s music after 94, 95, I don't have a good, like, in general, I don't have a high opinion of it. I don't think there were a lot of bands that were doing things that I found at that time interesting. And I listen back on those things, and I go, yeah, like, I feel like a lot of reactions to Seattle music or to whatever alternative or whatever, I just think that they kind of like, with exceptions, but I think for the most part they fizzled out. Now, if we look outside of just the microscope of fucking, these are these little blips in the fucking decade that define the decade, and we look at something that's more, things that are more like universal and still relevant today, the JFK was on your list.
Yeah.
And I mean, someone can say, well, okay, well, so what? JFK was a fucking long time ago. And yeah, but it was not a long time ago that fucking like, our current president was almost fucking straight up assassinated as well. By this lone shooter on a fucking rooftop. You know what I mean? So it's
that we've heard nothing else about. Yeah. Sorry. Continue.
I mean, there's things that we think are you can make the connections. This is still there. Falling Down, which we did not too long ago.
3-4 weeks ago. Yeah.
was on your list, and that kind of that is still alive and well. That idea of that fucking and I mean, and on some level, the guy who did this who shot Trump in the ear is a version of fucking Defense. You know what I mean? Of Michael Douglas's character in Falling Down. Donald Trump himself is a version of Michael Douglas's character in Falling Down, mixed with Gordon Gekko, mixed with whatever the fuck else. You know.
Was bringing all that up. Was the LAPD Rodney King beating tape on your list?
That was on my list.
I thought so. I thought this is bringing back a lot of memories. Wow, yeah.
Because once
it fits. It fits beautifully. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Once I put in for the '60s. Once I put in the Zapruder film on my list for that, and I opened up my possibilities of what could be included on my film list. That it didn't have to be a fucking like a studio film.
Well, it didn't have to be cinema.
But
in the convention, cinema in the conventional sense of cinema.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Which I hadn't considered. I didn't know you were going to. I mean, it was no surprise when you did it. I was like, oh, that's pretty creative. I'm glad he did that because I never would have went with that. I never would have went that way. And I'm glad you did it because it brought a vision to the episodes and the concept of the episodes that was more in keeping with the idea than I had ever really contemplated. I didn't think about that. When you did it, I was like, of course, that makes perfect fucking sense that he would do that. Yeah. And
so fast forward to this, and you're right, to have the Rodney King beating camcorder footage on there, that is probably like the most relevant of like today still of any fucking thing that was on those lists. Because right? I mean, you have to be completely from another planet to not fucking see that and to see the trajectory of that. Even that OJ thing, there's an OJ thing on Netflix.
Well, we were talking a little bit about that beforehand and the binging of that, and you could make a statement about that Bronco chase, but I think the courtroom footage of all of that going down and the tension between, let's face it, white and black America, it really speaks to the culture and the difference in how we view one another. And I say white and black America because, and I've always felt this as far as race is concerned, the other ethnic minorities, Latin, Asian, Native American, none of us really count.
I mean, and there are more than those.
In more than those, yeah, of course. But you know what I'm talking about as far as, you know, the generalization that I'm making here. This country is a white-black country, and nothing brought that out more than the O.J. Simpson trial, and people were riveted to that. I remember being in college when that verdict came down, and I remember the excitement on one side of the room and the disgust on the other side of the room. I mean, it was unbelievable.
I would love to do an episode on that.
We should.
Because it's obviously, I think there are still things that are relevant to that. That, you know, that's pretty obvious. But it is such a key piece of that time also. Like the aspect of like it being the so-called the trial of the century. And it is one of those moments from the 90s that is like key, such a super key to understanding what that decade was like and what LA was like. Like you can't separate that from the timeline, and Rodney King sets up the basis for that that verdict.
Yeah,
The footage of to see footage of, and we've done riots episodes.
Mm-hmm.
To see footage of the Rodney King beating is, if you haven't seen it, go look it up. Go see it. Watch it on YouTube. If you've seen it, but it's been a while, you remember. But look at it, and it's just like, oh fuck, like they were just beating the fuck out of him.
Yeah,
and that to me is the closest filmic artifact from the 90s that it hits the closest to today to me. Closer than all these things that make the 90s, these very specific fucking things to that decade. Like, this is something that transcends.
Oh, absolutely.
And so that to me is that. Moving on beyond that, we went to Cronenberg. We did Dead Ringers because we were now back into the horror shit.
We were lucky with that because neither of us had seen it. Right?
Yeah, I don't think I had. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't have a memory of having watched it before.
It was one of those rare experiences. A film from a director that we both admire. I came much later to my admiration for Cronenberg than you did. That's one of the great things about this show is that this show allows me to deep dive Cronenberg, Lynch, all those names that I've gone through in the past. But it's very rare that you find something that's that well made and both has a vision, but a lead actor that delivers the material in such a way that it's overwhelming. I mean, Jeremy Irons is fucking brilliant in that movie. It's a great performance. Really exceptional. Wow.
We did The Wicker Man.
Go ahead. Let's go back to that shit.
It was one of those that it has this prestige to it. And I think we both felt that the payoff was not equal to the
cult,
the hype.
Yeah.
And then now, okay, that's not the film's fault. Okay, that's hype. That's going into these expectations. Okay, try to now, I mean, as much as possible, try to like wipe all that away and say like, okay, is this that, like, are we giving it are we not giving it a shot? And I think it's just one of those things that the idea of the film is better than the film itself.
Yeah. We followed that up with the remake, which was a lot more enjoyable, I thought, but not a good movie. But it was one of those Nicolas Cage leaps into the ridiculousness, and it was fun for that. I had a good time watching that movie because it was so ridiculous. But the best part of both Wicker Man films and the episodes that we did was, I don't know how the fuck you found that documentary from 2021, Woodland Darkened Days Bewitched, A History of Folk Hero, but that's a 3-hour long documentary that really grabbed a hold. And I'm biased, I'll admit. I love films I love documentaries about films. I love the story of film. I love LA Plays itself. A lot of LA Plays itself. I love movies about movies. And Woodland Dark and Days Bewitched, you can find it on YouTube. Hopefully you can still find it on YouTube. But it really deep dives into the cultural similarities of horror, from witches through vampires, werewolves. I mean, what else is cults and
Well, it was very much about, so it's, if you're like a fucking geek, a film geek, and especially a horror geek, and you didn't listen to this episode, and you didn't fucking like listen to us and take our advice, you fucked up.
Yeah, you
so
did.
Go fucking look for Woodlands Dark and Days Bewitched, the history of folk horror. You're gonna enjoy it. You're gonna sit with it and fucking like, however you decide to do it. But it's a really like slow fucking burn on folk horror. So it really focuses on the idea of primarily in the British Isles. With quotes I say that. But like England and fucking and the surrounding areas, and really the idea of the folk. The horror that comes out of the earth, the horror that comes out of a transition from agrarian society to industrialized society. And remember, the Industrial Revolution starts there. And so that's like the basis, and it moves out from there, from horror in the fields, horror with witches, to look at like, okay, what's the American take on this? What is, okay, Children of the Corn? Okay, what is this? What's the folk horror of Stephen King and the folk horror of the small town, of the farm? What's the folk horror of fucking, if we're going to look at like Nordic and Scandinavian, what's the folk horror of the fjord, so to speak, right? And then it really goes like global, and it starts to look at like those parallels, and it does it with footage, it does it with talking head interviews, but in a way that's fucking not. Sometimes you look at these talking head, especially and this is, we've talked about this and I'm going to talk about it again. We're at a place now, 10 years in, where when it comes time for Halloween and we can do the horror thing, like we've looked at the best fucking horror movies already, for the most part. There are still some strays here and there, but we've already looked at the best fucking horror films, because there are not that many.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about the best.
Well, it's a genre that's easy to. It's a genre that is easy to half-ass. It's cheap and made for kids in a lot of cases. Yeah.
We're not talking about the most fun ones. We're not talking about that's different. We're talking about The Exorcist on that level.
Yeah.
And then even like the poltergeists of the world are not on that level, but they are still iconic and pop cultural and all that. Like, but even those, like we're running out of those.
Yeah.
And so now the challenge is it's not just to look at something and take what we think is interesting out of it and develop a conversation out of that. It's also, for me, my biggest thing is and this is just a weird, I don't know if you feel that, I'm sure we've talked about it, but I don't know that, like, I can't remember exactly how you feel, but for me, my biggest thing is just the vibe of like, do I feel like the horror talks and the horror watches that we've done have been horror enough? Have we really fulfilled our obligation to Halloween in the choices of films that we've talked about? And a lot of times in life, especially getting older, like, you can't go to the fucking haunted hay rides anymore. It's like you're running out of time. You got to work. You got to fucking go shopping, whatever the fuck you're doing. Sometimes I feel like, sometimes you feel like certain things get shortchanged and you're like, it was good, but I didn't fucking like.
Yeah.
burn it all up.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Use it up to the point to where it's like, now, okay, let's take down the Christmas lights, because we've had so much of that vibe for a month or more, that if we don't take it down now, it's not going to have the same impact for the next year. So, like, let's tear it all down and let's move on. Leslie likes to decorate for different seasons. And so, like, it really gets, like, you feel the cycle of, because she's a witch, so you feel the cycle of the moon and the cycle of the seasons. And so you're like, okay, now it's this time I can really sit in this. And then now when the summer's coming, you feel that, etc. With a couple things, going back to the vibe of it, like, it's hard to find stuff that you're like, yeah, like, I can sit in this shit and fucking, like, feel I'm in my horror zone. I'm in Halloween. I have a little fucking bat on this shoulder and a little crow on that one, and Elvira, the spirit of Elvira, I'm channeling her, and she's sitting here, and Bella Lugosi's over there, and we're all hanging out. With this documentary, you really feel like you can sit and fucking, like, nerd out on it. And so it's something that was cool that came out of our experience of watching Wicker Man, because it talks beyond just the Wicker Man. So that was a whole lot of shit just to say that.
Yeah, but it was a fun thing to say.
Yeah. From there, we moved into Jodorowsky's Santa Sangre, which is a surreal horror carnival film.
Well, it's exactly what you would expect from Jodorowsky. Poetic horror that doesn't make sense in a lot of ways, is very beautiful to look at, and dangerous. I mean, this man had dangerous ideas. I think he went into the psyche, and he challenged. I guess he challenged things about ourselves and how we look at the world. That's a very disturbing movie. That's the father and that's the mother and son and body dismemberment and fucking dead elephant. That was some crazy shit. And I remember just loving it. And there was rape. There was all kinds of ridiculous shit in it.
Yeah, it's different. You're gonna, if you haven't seen it, you're going to see something that is completely its own thing, and that's so fucking refreshing. So from there we went to
but wait a minute. It's not its own thing and different for the sake of being different, and it's still. I think a lot of people look at that as some kind of noble act. And I think Jodorowsky is different because there is a true passion. He's not being different for the sake of being different. He's being different because that's the story he's telling.
And because he is different.
He is different. He is a poet. He is a beautiful, romantic, horrible, beautiful man. He's an artist. And you see it with Santa Sangre. You see it with the Holy Mountain and what's the other one that I love? The Holy Mountain, Santa Sangre, and which one?
El Topo.
El Topo. El Topo. I still have about 3 films of his to watch, and it's kind of weird at this point. I kind of it's kind of like a meal that you're savoring. I don't know if I don't know if I want to use them up. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is like, when you can savor, that's like, to savor cinema is so, and it to me, it feels so rare. Even though, I mean, we have these opportunities and we have these things, but that attitude is kind of like, yeah, that's what I want. One of the one of the things I want to go into this year in cinema is to savor it, and also to look at the relevance and to really look at apply it to ourselves. But before we move on from that one, it's the idea of like doing something different to do something different versus just being who you are. Typically, the doing something different thing, it's like most people are trying to do the same shit. But then, like, if you're coming from that kind of like very narrow perspective, even the idea of like, well, you know what? I don't want to do what everyone else is doing. I want to do something different. Even that tends to, you have like your top 3 things that everyone's fucking doing that you can do. And then you have your fucking top 3 things that what you do when you want to do something different. When you want to also be like everyone else who wants to do something different. Which is pretty, like, typically it's like, well, the first one you go to is, well, I'm going to do the opposite. So even that can become formulaic, where it's like, well, I'm not gonna have the fucking like damsel in distress. I'm gonna have the guy be the damsel in distress for this movie because let's just flip it on its ear, guys. Oh man, that's fucking so like, who would have fucking thought of that, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, and you just, but then that becomes also formulaic, and you can see that, and it just kind of doesn't feel. It just feels like, oh, this person was doing so-called something different. Jodorowsky's not even fucking in that, like, he's not in that game. He's in the game of, you're having a fucking dream, and you're explaining your dream to someone, and you're telling them, I was a fucking, I was a moth that was trapped in Jello. And the Jello was, but I saw the moth, but I knew that the moth was me. But I didn't know how, but I just knew in my dream that I was that moth. And then it goes from there, and that's how dreams work, where you're just like, there are things that somehow you just know, but everything else you're like, what the fuck, I don't know anything else. But here we are, and there's something beautiful about it, but also something horrible and terrifying about it, and here we are. That's that fucking, like, bizarre, but it's also that fucking, like, specific to his shit. Where it's like, he's not trying to be anybody else. He's just doing his shit. And that's what I mean when I say it's unique. It's him. There's only one Alejandro Jodorowsky, and that's it. And you want to see one of those things from him? Watch Santa Sangre.
Yeah. I'd have to agree. It's beautifully put. Yeah.
From there, we did South Korean horror. We did The Wailing, which was an interesting shamanic fucking haunting possession film.
Yeah. It was interesting. The take on it. It was a film that had been sitting on my shelf for a couple of years. A longtime listener, longtime supporter of the podcast, Cornelius Burrows, he had sent it to me, and sometimes it just sits there, and the cover is intimidating, but it's like, find the time to watch this movie. And one of the great things is that what we do, October comes around, and like you said, we're running out of the traditional classic well-known horror, so we branch out. And in this particular instance, we branched out into Asia, and the haunting, the Wailing, my God, that was overwhelming. It really went to some weird places, and I wasn't prepared for how dark and how excessive, but excessive in a good way, that the filmmaking would be. It's really interesting to watch different cultures take on a genre that you're only familiar with from one place. And I think a lot of a lot of audiences for the most part are only familiar with what is closest to them. Well, I can't say that because foreign audiences are usually familiar with their filmmaking, but they're also inundated with the American cinematic experience, the Warner Brothers, Paramount, Universal, these films that flood the globe. As Americans, we don't get an opportunity to see what the rest of the world is making. So when we do,
it's only that portion that's really that pursues it.
Yeah.
It's only the portion that's like, and then it becomes like a fucking, it really becomes this, French cinema, Japanese cinema, and because those are like cool enough to where it's like more people will see that. Then you have the layer of like people who are into cinema itself are gonna just go a little bit deeper. But for the most part, it's kind of like, I don't want to read subtitles, people say.
I don't want to read.
That's been the thing for so fucking long. Right, I don't want to read at all. Or it's kind of like, fuck that, that's boring. Like, it's also audiences that are not used to foreign films, like, are people who watch foreign films have a different level of training in terms of being a spectator and a viewer than people who watch Marvels. I'm sorry.
It's true. It's absolutely true.
You can, like, are you willing to watch a 3-hour film with just, it's like with no fucking necessarily like storyline, like that's just mostly dialogue and beautiful shots? Or do you want to watch a 90-minute film that's just mostly beautiful shots of things with like poetic fucking disjointed voiceovers? Or do you want to watch something in black and white with people smoking, just talking to each other all the whole time? Most people don't. Most people want to see shit blow up. Most people want to see, they want to see tits and they want to see things blow up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, you know what I mean? That's what it is. And they want to see Will Smith. They want to see Tom Cruise running.
Mm-hmm.
They want to see the Tom Cruise run. And look, like, I want to see that too. But, like, there's more than that. And, like, you want to see a fucking 3-hour movie with fucking one take? You know what I mean? Like, most people do not. But they are not equipped. And it's getting worse. So it's kind of like, things have their moments. Fucking South Korean cinema is like, is now becoming more like cool enough to where it's like people are into it. And shows, these things that are on the Squid Game and all this shit like that are like on to where people watch, or the different generations of anime that people watch. That's separate. But if you're still talking, like, if we're talking about are people watching fucking Kurosami? Are people looking at no, it becomes all, you're a fucking film snob, you know, like
well, it all becomes idiocracy. What are you, a fag? You know, I mean, that's really
exactly. Exactly.
This guy sounds like a fag. I'm sorry. It's an ugly thing to look at the stupidity and ignorance of a culture, but when you hear that the major studios are or dictating to writers to introduce a new character into the scene by having them explain who the fuck they are, because people don't have the patience to watch a film and usually have it on as background sound, you start to understand that that's not really the studio. That's the culture embracing laziness and ignorance. The studio's just doing what a studio does, maximizing profits.
Right.
And an artist has to fight. Yeah.
Right. So to really be able to go out and explore and fucking find these other films, it's refreshing, but at the same time, it's just gonna become one of those things where it's like, can't you guys just talk about fucking Poltergeist? You know, can't you just talk about? And most of you who are listening to this aren't those people.
No.
But like, the people who aren't listening are those people.
Yeah.
Not all of them, obviously, but can't you just do Ghostbusters, but the one where they're all chicks? Do something different. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we're doing something different. We're doing fucking The Wailing. We're doing Kwaidan. We're going to Japan now. What the fuck is that? You know what I mean? Like, it just becomes that thing where it's like, yeah, I like fucking Chinese food. I like Panda Express. And whatever, I'll eat from there just as anyone else. But like, but it's kind of like, no. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Fucking no. No. Do not fucking like, do not put these fucking like limitations on yourself. We did do Kwaidan.
And again,
classic from the 60s.
Yeah. Well, classic from the 60s that neither of us really knew anything about. I had heard of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And the image,
you see the picture. You see
the picture, yeah. The tattoos on the face. And there's sometimes there's an image when they sell a film that an image will just stick with you. And that tattooed words being applied to a face has sat in my psyche, in my unconscious, in my subconscious for about 30 years. It took me 30 years to get to this film. But because of this show, because of the month of October, because of running out of traditional classic horror, accessible horror, I find myself in Japan in the 1960s, traveling back to the Tokugawa period or the Eiji period, whatever, the Meiji. And I see one of the great one of the great short story films ever made. That movie was brilliant. That movie was beautiful. I'm always excited to talk about movies between you and I'm excited to get on this microphone and put out whatever it is that I'm able to put out about it. But when you see something like this that has always been there, and you discover it, this is like finding diamonds in the dump. You dig through so much shit in order to find something like Masaki Kobayashi's Kwaidan. It is a brilliant film, and it pains me to know that people aren't going to see it. I'm happy that people who listen to us are going to say, wow, these guys are really excited about this. Maybe I should give this one a chance. And then half of those people are going to be like, I don't get it. But the other half are going to be like, Jesus Christ. Because the movie is if if you're willing to invest in it, it's an incredible payoff. That was a great film.
Yeah. Yeah. From there, we did William Friedkin's Cruising. If you're interested in fisting, or you have any like kind of desire to explore that aspect of yourself in a very cursory kind of fucking way, William Friedkin, you know, the irony is that like it's a fisting film, but it's not that deep, you know.
Nice.
That was part of our critique of it, was that is that how do you do it in such a way that it doesn't feel, and I described it either in the episode or subsequently somewhere else as, maybe it was somewhere else, I don't know, but I'm going to re-describe it here. It's like when you go to Disneyland and you go on like the Snow White ride or whatever those Fantasyland rides are, they're typically the store, they're all the same. It's like you get in your little car and it's typically pretty short, but you're just driving around these different little environments. And you're going through these little doors or whatever, and then you go in like a circle, and then you pull up and you get out. William Friedkin's Cruising is very much like that, where you just kind of like get into the car, but instead of a car, it's like in the shape of a fist, and you just go through the fucking the anus door, and you kind of just drive by this New York subculture in the late 70s, 80s that involved fucking gay dudes dressed as cops, fucking, and bikers and leather and all that shit, in the fucking appropriately in the fucking meatpacking district of fucking like the Lower West Side of Manhattan or whatever, and you just pass it by, and there's Al Pacino, and then fucking then you get off. I mean, you know, metaphorically, right? You get off the ride, and for being William Friedkin, it was just kind of like, fuck, I wish there would have been something that didn't just feel like a form of like tourism.
Well, I think that's, yeah, I think that's the way we described it, is that it was a look at the world from an outsider's point of view without trying to understand what that world was, or the motivations, or the culture. And so subsequently it's exploitation. It's a film that fails in its attempt to depict it, but it's fascinating because it's a gay S&M club scene that no longer exists, or doesn't exist to the extent that it does in this film. Because we're talking about, what is it, 81? 80? Somewhere around there. 1980. 1 year later, 2 years later, however, maybe at that time without people being aware of it, AIDS would come onto the picture and destroy that entire world. So you had a level of sexual freedom. Some people would call it decadence. Some would call it depravity. Some would just call it a culture so restricted to the perimeters that it would have to find its
expression, basically.
Yeah. And a lot of times when you repress something like that, and it does find a place to live, it does so in the extreme. I think there are certain elements of Cruising that are brilliant, but without the attempt to understand the world, it becomes very exploitative and it adds to the fear and the hatred that this community would experience. That's not to say that I don't think the film should exist. I think the film should, but it's a I think it's an irresponsible film, and I think Friedkin never saw the bigger picture of what he could have made a much better film. He could have made a much better film.
The question is like how, you know what I mean? Like, and obviously, like that's a deeper, harder puzzle to crack. But
show the lives of these people outside of the club. Show them hooking up after the club. Make the character of Pacino go deeper into his descent into his own homosexuality. It's all surface. It's the kind of film that it's a film that wants to make a bold statement, but is too afraid to go as deep as it needs to go to make that statement. That's ultimately the main problem with the film. It takes the controversial nature of the subject matter, the excitement and the thrill of the film is left to the controversy and the what do you call it? The fact that it's so what's the fucking word where it's unacceptable? It's
like taboo.
Yes. It's so incredibly taboo that's it's so extreme and taboo that Friedkin leans on that to sell his story. And there's a much better and much more compelling story within the film. That's the problem with it.
From 80s disjointedness, from 80s imbalance, from 80s mythology and romance, through the 90s, through folk horror, through Rodney King, ultimately to 80s fisting and underground fucking leather bars with Al Pacino. It's been an interesting retrospective episode to go back and look at these pieces that are, it's like you look back and it's always a question. It's the same thing when you just look at individual films where you're like, and you say this a lot. It's like, this film aged well. This film didn't age well.
Yeah.
Because some shit is just timeless. Some shit has elements that are timeless, but the look is so dated. Pretty soon we're going to get into, the next time we do this, we're going to go into the 2000s. And obviously those are going to have elements that are still, that we're still, now that we're part of, you know, that century, etc., we're going to be still dealing with some of those things. But it's been interesting to look back at that particular chunk of time with a heavy emphasis on 80s and 90s, and really be able to see more things or more thematics from the 80s that are resonating now than, in terms of the films that we were looking at, than even from the 90s, which now seems very much not buried, but like of its time and back there. So as we move forward and continue to move back, it'll be interesting to see how we can apply those things to what's happening now. in pursuit of those things that are best left back there, but still looked at occasionally, and those things that are best like dug up and fucking dragged around like a cinematic weekend at Bernie's type of shit. Well, not that that's not dug up, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that we can like really like. Sometimes you have to fucking like. You have to carry that thing around in order for it to really mean to understand what it means.
Yeah.
That being said, this episode is for Mr. Burroughs, a member, a continued member going back. buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. That's buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. A lot of you guys and gals, etc., are very generous. You give us your attention. You give us your coffees here and there. You give us repeatedly. Even members have also donated after their monthly donation or whatever. Thank you. The greatest gift is the gift of attention. Right now, we are in basically a war for our attention. It's where we put our attention and our time is what matters most in our lives. And that you guys are, and I say that guys in the California plural, that you guys are giving us your attention means a lot to us. We're trying to give our attention to you as much as possible as well in terms of doing these things week in and week out. Things are not easy. Things are going to get a lot harder for all of us. Whatever you guys can do, we appreciate it. If you know someone who might benefit or might be into our shit, pass it on. Let them know. Let them know that there are two assholes out there that are digging up those fucking cinematic bones and having those cinematic weekend at Bernie's experiences. If you think you know someone, pass it on. Do the word of mouth thing that what we used to do, and we used to be able to be like, hey, have you fucking heard this? Do that. Help us out with that if you can as well. And if you don't, because you're fucking like, you're like, I'm the only one out here. Like, we're also those people too. So just keep tuning in. Do what you can. Pay attention. Always fucking pay attention. Always to everything. Pay attention. Don't obey like they live. Pay attention. We'll see you next time.